That also speaks for itself. The Russians are making gains in the Huliaipol area. They are advancing on Pokrovsk, Mirnohrad. They are advancing on Vovchansk. In other words, they have intensified their efforts in several areas at once, something that hasn't happened for a long time. Some analysts are saying that the front is collapsing. How would you describe the current situation?
I would say it is consistently difficult, but with the prospect that the front will hold and a high probability of that. Let me try to explain. If we analyze the last 2 years, let's do it together. Let's remember how it was. Let's review the broadcasts. Let's listen to our acquaintances. The front has been in a difficult state for quite a while now. Yes, for a long time. More than 2 years. For more than 2 years, the defense forces have not carried out any major breakthroughs except for the Kursk operation, which was critically necessary. It was important in order to draw away the enemy's forces and put them under overall stress. They didn't think that Ukraine had the capability and resources for such daring operations, which turned out to be successful. So one way or another, active assault and strike actions are taking place along all sectors. And now let's recognize, if not a feat of the Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian people, what is currently happening on the front line. The enemy outnumbers us in terms of personnel, technical solutions, and the number of drones. Not in every category. In some areas there is parity, in some we have the advantage, but mostly not. And why is this happening? Because China is supplying by the container load. There is a constant flow of better components for assembling drones, better technologies, all entering the Russian Federation. The enemy surpasses us in the amount of artillery, the ability to supply ammunition, the number of combat aircraft, and the number of air defense systems. So overall, if you compare, the enemy significantly outnumbers us in terms of forces and resources. From a mathematical point of view, how can one assess the war? Ukraine should have suffered much greater setbacks. But the resilience of the Ukrainian nation, the resilience of the Ukrainian people, the resilience of the Ukrainian military forces, the enemy's plans to break against our resistance, and as a result, the enemy is forced to resort to theatrical performances. So what do I mean by that? The enemy has been claiming for probably 3 months now that they have taken Vovchansk, but that's not true. Vovchansk is still largely controlled by the defense forces. So of course, there are areas where active fighting is ongoing. Of course, the enemy is trying to outflank us. And as a result, what does the enemy do? Just think about it. He can't capture Pokrovsk. He is being destroyed by the force Vovchansk, sorry. As for Pokrovsk, basically the situation is the same. He can't capture it, and at the same time a thick fog descends. What does the enemy do? They order their troops to take aquafresh flags, tricolors, 3 colors, the Russian flag, and to spread out across the city, trying to slip between the defensive lines of the defense forces. For what purpose? When the fog clears, on command, they raise the aquafresh flags, take a photo with a Mavic drone, and then Russian propaganda will post, Vovchansk has been taken by the occupiers. Do you understand how this works? And then we have to refute it. We have to prove that this didn't happen because it's being discussed inside Russia. It's being discussed within our own country as well, and there is a main audience for the show that the Russian Federation is putting on. That is the President of the United States, Trump, because they really can help further about Kupiansk. Putin has said so many times that he is taken.
15 battalions surrounded.
The defense forces were able to hold the left bank bridgehead. Kupiansk, Livoberezhny, Kupiansk, Vuzlovi. The enemy was tasked, just think about it, with capturing it by November 1st. As of now, they have not accomplished this task. Kupiansk, Pravoberezhny, as you know, the enemy was blocked on the northern outskirts by strong defense force units. They will also share what operations were carried out when the time is right and it is possible to disclose such information. And in the city itself, active measures are being taken to eliminate sabotage and reconnaissance groups. That is, everyone who is hiding in basements or other shelters is being found, destroyed, or taken prisoner if they surrender. Further, Pokrovsk. Before the full-scale war, the population was up to 60,000. For a year, the enemy has been trying to take Pokrovsk. He concentrated an unprecedented amount of forces and resources on this section. Just so you understand, if you take, for example, the Kupiansk area, that's a 25-kilometer stretch of the front, and the amount of enemy presence we observe there, the number of movements we detect. Not everyone is destroyed, but somewhere the enemy has moved. They have been spotted here in cover, here somewhere else. It will be somewhere around 200 per day on a 25-kilometer section of the line of combat contact. If you take Pokrovsk, that's from 550 on that same section, an unprecedented number. And for a year now, the enemy, using its best assault units, overwhelming manpower, artillery, combat aviation, and its best drone units, has not been able to accomplish this mission, this task. They cannot push back the defense forces. I have to say that this is happening on the vast majority of sectors. If we talk about Dobropilia, the situation there is also quite difficult because the front line is extremely long, or rather extensive, and as a result, it is quite difficult for the defense forces to maintain the same level of dynamism everywhere. But measures are being taken to lure the enemy into fire traps. Nowadays, people are used to calling them kill zones. Measures are being taken to stabilize the situation. Of course, the situation is difficult, but how can it be resolved? Ukraine is addressing this technologically by developing our drone systems, by expanding our artillery, and by producing our own ammunition. And in these areas, we have taken concrete steps. Well, let's analyze this together. You hear the news every day that Ukraine has struck military targets on the territory of the Russian Federation.
Yes, now it's already become routine.
Routine. But just a year ago, this was unprecedented, right? So what is behind this routine? It's the painstaking work of the state, the Ukrainian people, and Ukrainian manufacturers who managed to produce and modernize those drones that are now operating against legitimate military targets on the territory of the Russian Federation, right? This is our shared achievement.
Yes, and people are confident. I'm sure that people contributed to those fundraisers that resulted in successful strikes on Russia, just as they are now contributing to the fundraiser for your unit with more than 50,000 hryvnias donated by kind people. We have a QR code on the screen. We have the card number. This is for the Achilles Regiment for drones on fiber optics. If you are able to donate, please don't stop. Mr. Yuri, but there is such a term as metal fatigue. Of course, the defense forces have been making titanic efforts all these years to hold back an enemy that surpasses us in everything and to make them fight for a city of 60,000 for years. But war does not develop linearly. That is, so that there isn't this sense of complacency like, well, they took a year to capture Pokrovsk, so the next settlement will take them another 10 years. No, it could just happen that the front collapses and the Russians quickly break out into open territory, and then the front only stops at the Dnipro. As we can also hear now from some respected experts that this is actually a realistic scenario. How can we prevent such a collapsing moment?
As for respected experts, all I ask is that you pay attention to the statements made by the General Staff. Of course, listen to everyone you consider authoritative, analyze, and make your own decisions. Our nation is intelligent and well educated. I am convinced that every Ukrainian can draw their own conclusions. But I believe that no one can understand the real situation at the front better than those who are directly carrying out combat missions and the military leadership. Well, even I, as a tactical level commander, know exactly what is happening in those sectors where the heroic men and women of the Achilles unit are carrying out their combat missions. If we talk about the entire line of contact, I can't be deeply in the material. That's what the General Staff is for. They know everything and can give a specific answer to a specific question. And just think about it, when the General Staff is being discredited, including in this way, who benefits from that? Is it solely the opinion of Ukrainian military personnel that something is going wrong? Or are these certain elements in particular of Russian propaganda that are being woven into the narratives with the aim of spreading distrust among the personnel toward the higher military and political leadership? These are all information campaigns that enormous resources are being spent on. We have to say honestly and openly that behind any technological solution, well, we've talked about Firepoint, we've talked about Deep Strike, which operate on the territory of the Russian Federation, but we have the best bombers in the world. We have made significant progress in the production of FPV drones, particularly thanks to Ukrainians who supply, assist, and contribute, and the defense forces receive them. Our state has increased its capacity to produce specialized munitions for drones, which are effectively carrying out combat missions. But money is also needed for this in order to make purchases. In other words, technologically we are moving forward and robotic ground systems are being developed. But it's important to understand that all of this is just a resource for conducting combat operations. Then the main asset for conducting combat operations remains the ordinary human being. Because behind every machine gun, behind every cannon, behind every drone, behind every interceptor drone carrying out a combat mission, there is a living person, a man or a woman, a boy or a girl, who is directly carrying out these tasks. Therefore, when we talk about mobilization processes, we should pay attention to the recruitment programs that our state has launched now, because you have an unprecedented, unique opportunity to assess your civilian experience, skills, and knowledge. Aha, I know how to do this, this, and that. Open a vacancy and see which specific units need which positions. Choose the one that suits you best, go through the interview, and be mobilized to a specific unit. And now someone might say, but there's always a risk that if I get mobilized, for example, as a driver, I could be transferred to infantry units or anything related to that. Look, that's more of an exception than a rule. At the moment, if you pass, don't drink, don't do drugs, don't cause trouble, don't lead an immoral lifestyle, and work effectively for the good of the state, the commander will have no reason to transfer you from one position to another, because all our roles are important. The military mechanism works like a well-coordinated system. For example, rear personnel are often criticized. Criticized is a slang word. What I mean is they're insulted like, oh, he's just sitting in the rear. Well, look at it this way. In order for our cannon to fire on the front line of engagement, someone has to acquire the ammunition abroad. Someone else has to bring it to the state border. Then it has to go through customs. After that, it needs to arrive at the logistics warehouses, and only then can it be delivered to the front. That's why we, the Ukrainian nation, work as a single, well-coordinated mechanism. And if we keep doing this, we will definitely endure.
And the proof of that is the results of the fundraiser. People donated 100,000 hryvnias in just 11 minutes, for which we are immensely great.
Which camera should I look at?
This one. You're on TV. Mr. Yuri, thank you. That was Yuri Fedorenko, commander of the 429th Separate Unmanned Systems Regiment Achilles. Thank you to everyone who took part.